Now, early one Saturday morning, a wealthy businessman from the big city drove several hours into the countryside to check out on a new business venture. And as he was returning around dusk on a road in the middle of nowhere, his car broke down. And with no cell phone reception, he got out in despair, looking around before finally looking upwards and saying a prayer. And as soon as he finished that prayer, a crow flew over. And as he watched the crow fly, he could see high up on the hill through the trees a small cabin. And so, seeing that as an answer to his prayer, off he went. Now, unknown to the businessman, the owner of that cabin was also from the big city. A car mechanic, in fact, who used the cabin for weekend getaways. However, as the businessman was trudging up the hill through the brush and through the trees and swatting away all the mosquitoes, his big city prejudices took over. He began to think, who on earth would want to live out in the middle of nowhere? Obviously, someone who was up to no good. And so by the time he reached the cabin, he was so frightened that when the mechanic opened the door, he punched the poor man in the face and ran off. Now, obviously that's just a made-up story, and yet I think it illustrates how easy it is for us, because of our preconceived ideas, to overlook and miss the very ones whom God has sent to help us. We live in the age of the spectacular, the grand, and so I think sometimes it's easy for us to assume that the ones whom God will send into our lives to help us, well, they'll be extraordinary people. And yet I think more often is the case that He sends ordinary people just like you and me. So perhaps we're struggling with a personal issue and God sends someone along our path. And yet because that person happens to have tats up and down his arms and maybe even a nose ring, we think that God couldn't possibly use someone like that, and so we ignore him and just keep on going. Or maybe our marriage is on the rocks and we cry out for God for help, and He sends us that nice old couple, the Browns, who, although they've certainly had their ups and downs over the years, nevertheless, they've been married for 50 plus years now. But why would God use them? I mean, Mr. Brown, come on. He was a car mechanic during his working career, and Mrs. Brown, well, she was just a homemaker. How many marriage articles have they ever got published? How many marriage books have they ever written? How many Twitter followers do they have? Be very careful, my friends, that you don't punch in the face the very ones whom God has sent to help you.